So Sam, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But
Thank you.
Before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jenfes, in the Skupune district of Limpopo.
Yeah.
Born and bred there in a small village called Muripani. And then, of course, later followed my mom to another village around Jenfes called Malivong. And that's where her in-laws are.
Right. And Sam, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Wow. I must be honest, Nick, when I grew up, I wasn't really very much preoccupied with the idea of a career. I was very much preoccupied with the idea of getting educated and escape poverty. And as to what type of a career it was going to be, I never really thought of that other than knowing that education will be my liberator. It is only later in my professional education journey, when I was at the university, that I thought perhaps it would be a good thing to become an economist. And don't ask me why. I don't think I really understood the responsibility that is put on economists. And I don't think I would have made a very good economist either.
So Sam, who inspired you in your early days?
In the early days, I was inspired, obviously, like all the young people growing up in the rural areas. Those teachers, that used to look after us at the primary school, they were really very well groomed teachers of those days. They were mindful of the way they dress, the way they communicate, the way they carry themselves. They took themselves very serious. At the same time, they were very close to us. And I always imagined myself being at that stage. So it was looking very good to become an adult. And as I grew up, and of course, coming to Gauteng, one person that really inspired me, unfortunately, is no more with us, is a gentleman called George Negoda, one of the founding fathers of the Black Management Forum. He really inspired me into who I am today. He was a representative of Mobil Oil, which happened to be my scholarship provider at Wits University. And George at that time was working for Mobil Oil, looking after their scholarship program. And he used to come to the campus and study with us at the library. Right. And he will say to me, George, as Black people in South Africa, by numbers we are in majority, but by quality we are not. And the day when we take over this country, we're going to be in trouble if we don't educate ourselves. I never forgot that. That has always been my inspiration. And until today, I can see what he meant.
Now, Sam, looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point where things could have gone different? Yes.
Many turning points, Nick, in my life. The obvious ones were, for instance, when I got the scholarship to leave the country and go and study and work in Germany. That was a turning point. I don't think I was ready to become truly involved in serious work. I think this was well-timed in 1988 because I was still very hungry after having completed my commercial advancement training scheme to learn. And that training scheme was with the German Chamber of Commerce. And I had just completed it with the Mannesmann Diemek. I think you remember a German company called Mannesmann Diemek, which was later bought by Vodafone they don't exist anymore. But that for me was the major turning point, because being in Germany for that program also gave me the opportunity to come into contact with many of our exiled South Africans. And that was the time when they were thinking of coming back home. So the conversations were quite very, very insightful and very interesting. And then, of course, being in Germany at that time, and Germany was also just going through the early years of closer to unification. And I got to experience that, and I got to develop interest in the world politics and world trends. So that was a major turning point for me.
And Sam, what would you say is driving you today?
Well, what is driving me today, Nick, is my purpose, what I live to do, which I really discovered late in my years, having tried many other types of jobs. And my purpose is really is enabler of people's development. I'm quite very fascinated by the influence and the impact that my interventions are making on the developments of other people, either in the corporate space or in the society in general.
Now, Sam, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
It means a lot, Nick. I want to believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And we are in trouble today in the world because of poor leadership. And I will also want to say that it's not poor leadership of the current, perhaps the poor leadership of the recent past, the leaders who could not see the complexities that we are confronted with now. And then the leaders of today are therefore caught up in something that they were not really ready for, which means that if we don't prepare the emerging leaders for the future, they will find themselves caught up as well with the dynamics that we don't have or we don't even see today. When I look at the pace at which things are changing, technology, climatic conditions, geopolitical challenges, I really I become afraid that we are not going to be ready. And we need to accelerate the interventions in preparing leaders, not just training leaders, because training you can do at all times, but really engaging people in thinking ahead, imagining the future and imagining the solutions that might be required, and start providing for those solutions, whether at your own company, in government, or in the society, or yourself as a parent. If you don't prepare the young people for the type of world they may find themselves in, then the leadership of the future will fail.
And Sam, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
I've learned that leadership starts with yourself. I think we grew up in the times when leadership was always about the others. And I think that's a mistake. You can't be good at leading others and leading organizations if you don't succeed in leading yourself. That means understanding who you are, your perspectives, what brought you to where you are, the blind spots that you might not have, and doing something about it. And when you succeed in doing that, it becomes very easy to engage with the environment around you. A lot of people are good leaders in terms of perhaps leading other people, but they are failures in terms of them being exemplary to other people because they are not really conscious of who they are and the impact of their actions and utterances as leaders. So that to me, it cannot be excused. And this is what I've learned because I grew up without a father. I had uncles and my grandparents, of course, but I've had to be ready to learn by being observant and also being interested myself. And I call that self-mentorship and coaching development philosophy. Even with coaching, if you don't work with yourself, it's not going to be very easy to coach other people, because what are you then bringing over to them? You need to bring your full self, your energy, your inspiration, and your confidence so that they can actually be inspired by you. And that is what I learned. Many of the decisions I was taking basing them on the observations I made. And then I take decisions. And I realized that I'm actually leading myself. Make no mistake, mistakes were made, but successes were achieved. If I sat back and said, I have nobody to help me, I don't think I would have taken the decisions I've taken, like deciding to go to Germany, deciding to join certain companies, and deciding to start my own company. Nobody told me. I decided that this was the best thing to do. Nobody told me.
And Sam, when it comes to social media, what is it you tell aspiring leaders? How should they navigate social media to build their own brand?
Social media is integral to us on a daily basis, 24/7. It's not something that you even have a choice, because everybody else has migrated into that space. Social media has not changed anything of us. It has just added to us. So it shouldn't be treated as an invasion into our space. It is an enabler. We still commanded, demanded, and expected to achieve the results. And social media is just a platform. And that's the platform where you happen to find everybody. It's like a highway. You drive your Rolls Royce, your Toyota, your Corolla, or your Beetle. We meet on the highway. And if you don't want to come into highway, unfortunately today there's no alternative. It's a given and is expected of you when I meet you that I will find you on LinkedIn. I don't say, give me your card or your number or your email address. I say, I know your name, Nick. I hope your name is the same as your social media name. And therefore I go in and I find you in LinkedIn, and then I start communicating with you. It is just one of the many technology platforms that comes with the 4IR. And those who still think that they can do without it, I think they are sentencing themselves to jail.
Right. Now, Sam, these are challenging times, especially for future leaders. And what is your advice in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges future leaders should expect to encounter in their career?
Future leaders today must be aware of the imminent problems that the next generations are going to face. Number one, certainly the climate changes are going to present a huge sustainability issues to the society, to organizations, and to the world. And it's not even about whether you're participating in doing something about it. It's a question of, will you survive it as an individual and as a collective? That's the one big problem. Secondly, technology is defining the way we live our lives. I mean, the distance between the world and the countries of the world is non-existent today because of technology. Physically, nothing has changed, but emotionally, you can be in somebody's space who's sitting in New York because of technology. If you think of the new technologies like the metaverse that technology companies are talking about, I will not be able to buy. I won't be buying spectacles in the future that are not the window to the world for me. It's going to be a standard that when you wear spectacles at the same time, it is actually connecting to the world. Think of it. Today we hear parents are complaining that they cannot understand the Gauteng province online system for registering the students. I mean, that's the basic of the basics. I'm not blaming the parents. I'm blaming us, the leaders, for not preparing them and telling them the truth, that this is not something that you have a choice to own. It's gonna come. It's gonna be the way of life. So technology is definitely one of the defining competitive factors that the leaders of the future have to master. But also the future challenges is that the supplier, I mean, the customers and the employees are very much demanding. They know their rights. They don't owe you anything. They must be there with you because they want to and because you inspire them. So if you don't realize that the soft issues today and in the future are really the hardest.
Yeah.
So it's not enough to be technically trained as a business leader and not have emotional intelligence to understand and know the influence and the impact you have on the people. The other challenge that the leaders of the future are going to have is that the world is complex and yet very small, and you have to have a global mindset. I think in South Africa specifically, we have a lot of our problems that are as a result of the developments around us in the world, but we're trying very hard to solve them with the local solutions, which doesn't really solve any problem. So we need to look for solutions all over to solve the problems that we are faced with.
And Sam, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
Certainly, Nick, emotional intelligence, it's a must. People must know who they are, self-awareness, awareness of the others, awareness of the environment around you, the relationship management, and the leadership of others. Those are really key fundamentals of leadership. And then the ability to define the purpose of your organization in such a way that people are inspired by it, and that everything that they do is really linked to the strategy that you draw. Secondly, is passion. If you are able to make people passionate about being in your organization or in your surrounding, you have won the battle. And lastly, people want to be recognized. People want to be rewarded for their effort. People don't want to be ignored. So the way you performance manage people should be in such a way that you don't imply to people that you do them a favor by giving them a salary. It's a give and take situation. So those are the skills they should be able to master. But then they must be able to lead. They must be able to monitor and coach people. Coaching is not just for us coaches. It's also for the leaders. Those who are self-directed people, they do not need you to breathe down their necks. You must be able to use the coaching approach towards leading them and give them space to play the role and help you achieve your objectives as a leader, which you will have hopefully communicated clearly to them without any confusion.
Right. And Sam, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story when you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
You know, there are many, Nick. I wish we can spend the whole day and I'll take you through many young people and experienced people that I have influenced by my mentorship and coaching program. You can go to Siemens, you can go to APSA, you can go to Motorola, you can go to Sasol, you can go to my own organization, even the German Chamber of Commerce Commercial Advancement Training Scheme. You'll find a lot of people that have really changed their lives. I know one lady at APSA that used to be sitting at the security desk of APSA as a receptionist and filling up security forms. And I said to her that you don't belong here. And I recruited her to join our commercial advancement training scheme with the German Chamber, in which APSA was participating. The rest is history. Today, she is one of the top payroll administrators in one of the top companies in South Africa. Every time I talk to her, she has moved a notch up. And I keep on saying to her that you are one of the living examples that I never stop talking about. The other one is a young boy that was my homeboy who came to Gauteng, and he used to sell apples and caps at the Park Station, Johannesburg Railway Station. And I said to him that, no, you can't live Limpopo to come and sell in the street here in Johannesburg. I invited him into COMETSA Football Club. He couldn't play football, but he joined us on Saturday classes to learn skills development programs. And later on, and he had matric and just sitting with matric. And I referred him to the commercial advancement training scheme at the German Chamber. He got his first qualification, he got his big degree, he got honors. Today is one of the top managers at Sasol in the export space. I mean, that to me is a story of the many that I can share with you. And they are all off my heart, I can tell you.
Right.
And that is when I really realized that it is my calling. It's not because I want to make money. It is really my calling that I discovered. And I keep on helping people transition into greatness. And it makes me believe that all of us have it inside us. We just need the right mentor, the right coach, and the right connection with our purpose and decision and purposefulness to do something about it. Like Napoleon Hill always said, think and grow rich. The rest is in you.
That's right. And Sam, looking back over your own leadership journey and maybe your learning journey, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should study?
Absolutely. There are those that I have come across directly in my career journey, and there are those that I just observed from the distance. But for me, the great leaders that inspired me early in my career was when I joined the Black Management Forum. I mentioned one of them, George Negoda, but we had great leaders, the founding fathers of the Black Management Forum, like Eric Mafuna, Dr. Ruel Kosa, Don Mukonazi, the late George Negoda, as I mentioned, the late Lawton Ndlovu. In those days in South Africa, leadership and management for Black people was really very rare because we were almost banned from corporate South Africa. And the Black Management Forum was established to introduce management and leaders for Black people by Black people in organizations. I actually feel fortunate to have been there at that time when these leaders were really putting this organization together. And some of my peers that I grew up with in the Black Management Forum, Professor Bonam Mohale, Mpho Makwana, Becky Sivia, Dr. Malisela Mutlata, there are so many. Those are the real people that I rubbed shoulders with, and I knew that with those great leaders, I wouldn't go wrong. And then, of course, at a distance, I mean, and before I go at a distance, a great leader that I worked with at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, GIBS, was Professor Nick Benedel himself. A great leader that is, in my view, most underrated in South Africa. Somebody that started a business school from scratch and grew to become one of the sought-after leaders, experts in leadership in the world. Of course, I had the great Dr. Richard Mabonya, the late Dr. Richard Mabonya that I happened to work with in terms of entrepreneurship. Him and Sam Muzwenyane, Dr. Sam Muzwenyane, those are the great leaders among the Black people. Among the white people, I mean, people like Raymond Ackerman, those for me are the great leaders that we need to look at very closely that created things out of nothing. Globally, Nick, I'm very inspired by Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. I mean, under his leadership, Apple has become the first company in the world, $3 trillion business. I mean, how do you do that? It can only be great leadership. And then, of course, in African continent, Mr. Aliko Dangote, the Dangote of his Dangote was the right name?
Dangote.
Dangote, yes,
yeah.
of the Dangote group. Very unassuming, very quietly, but making huge impact in business in Africa. Our very own Dr. Patrice Motsepe has now taken over the leadership of CAF. I know sometimes when you talk of Patrice Motsepe, you sometimes don't know whether you look at him as a venture capitalist or as an entrepreneur, but he is definitely a leader who doesn't shy away to go into places where others people will shy away from. And those are really great leaders. We can't write off people like Elon Musk. He has his own challenges in terms of personality, but in terms of visionary leadership, trying to provide solutions of the future. Those, for me, are the people that we need to look at. And if you look at Richard Branson as well, he's one of those leaders that this famous book I'm looking at now, Leadership, How to Lead Effectively and Get Results by Marianne Abib-Pesh. She talks about creative and innovative leadership pathway. You know, leaders are the creators of things. Those are my inspirations that I want to share with you. On the academic space, there are also others. We can spend the whole day mentioning people like Professor Parking of the University of Cape Town. So there's a lot of interesting leaders out there that inspire me, and I'm sure people should look at them very closely to be inspired as well.
Thank you very much, Sam. And can you tell us how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
As mentioned, you know, go to any leadership link, social media platform, just type in Sam Tsima. You'll find me there. LinkedIn,
right.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, I'm there.
And last but not least, Sam, what is your message to the millions of learners out there that are now finishing school, they're considering a career? What are maybe one or two success principles they should take to heart?
I will say that they must have an internal locus of control. Many problems we are faced with are really requiring us to dig deeper inside ourselves. Solutions are not only in the form of resources, money, and otherwise, they are also in the form of energy within ourselves. They are in the form of attitudes and interest to make do with the little that we have. As I mentioned, I grew up and I knew that the only solution to my problems was going to be education. And when you work very hard, resources follow you. So sometimes it's a chicken and egg situation. Is it resources first before you work hard? Or is it working hard with the little that you have so that you attract more resources? I think it's the last, that work hard, try by all means to look for opportunities. The universe will only deliver to you what you deposit into it. If you sit down and do nothing, the universe will deliver nothing to you.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and reminding us that the universe will only reward what you put into it.
Thank you very much, Nick. I enjoyed having this conversation with you, and thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.